Hello everyone, welcome to the Comic Gamer Movie Show. My name's Deshaun, and today I'm here to bring you my review, my review of MindHunters Season 2. Now, MindHunters is a show on Netflix that came out in 2017. Now, I didn't watch MindHunters until literally a month ago, right before, because they started promoting MindHunters Season 2 on some of the other on YouTube and some of the other things. And occasionally, since I'm a Netflix user, obviously all the crap that I've reviewed off of Netflix on this channel, I go on there and I go on the YouTube channel and look at what's coming out, and they were promoting MindHunters heavily, and MindHunters Season 2 heavily, and I was like, okay, this seems interesting. I looked up the Rotten Tomato score, extremely high Rotten Tomato score. I looked up some reviews. Everyone was raving about this show. So then I watched MindHunters. MindHunters is one of the best shows I've ever seen in terms of being cerebral. Now, MindHunters isn't a show that's going to be for everyone, but if you're someone who's into both history, if you're someone who has a thicker skin, because there are things in this show that are pretty graphic, there are things in this show that are pretty grotesque, even cold and very calculating. But if you're someone who watches like cold cases on on TV, if you're someone who watches those kind of shows like 24 Hours Later, if you're someone who watches those crime shows, those shows about serial killers and those shows about, murderers and things of that nature, you are gonna eat this show up to pieces. Because, but the show is both historical, tense, and entertaining all at once. And the show, I would say this, that the show's easier when you don't have prior knowledge. Not easier. The show differs depending on what kind of prior knowledge you have to the actual people and actual cases, because most of all the characters, not all, there are some, characters made up for just the show, a lot of them, but there are a good chunk, most of all the characters are real people who really did some of these things. All of the serial killers, if not all of the serial killers, are real serial killers who did these things. And even the FBI agents that you follow most of them are the real guys behind the way that murders and the psychology and the what's the word I'm looking for here? In the documentation, in the way that the categorization, there it is, categorization of serial killers and murders. Like, in fact, this show shows how the phrase serial killer was even created, and the show follows this agent, this FBI agent named Holden Ford. Now, Holden Ford is an FBI agent. He's done a lot of hostage negotiations. And you really don't get too much, at least I can't remember off the top of my head, because I saw season 1 so long ago. You really don't get too much on Holden. So I guess I'm sort of reviewing season 1. I'm just give you a quick review of season 1 because I haven't reviewed that on here. You don't really get too much on Holden. Well, you know that he's an agent. You know he's been at this for a little bit. He's traveled a lot. He doesn't quite fit in, because Holden is an interesting character. He's the most interesting character on the show, which is great because he's the main character. And Holden has this thing with him where he's the definition of the man who says why. Every fiber of him is just asking, why do this? Why do that? And it's like, Holden's has this active mind and this vocabulary, and he starts off, and in the beginning of season 1, it starts off as this innocent naivety, active mind. His naivety kind of bothered me in the beginning of that show, because I was just like, how naive can you be? Because he was just so naive. He would always ask why. He never trusted his intuition. He always asked why. Always asked, he's always asking questions, and he's honestly, Holden's more of a philosopher. Holden has a lot of philosopher in him. He has a lot of, enlightenment. He has a lot of philosopher in him, a lot of enlightenment in him. He's just asking why. Because up to this point, you gotta remember, the show series probably takes place in like the late 60s. or late 60s, early 70s, I want to say. I can't quite remember off the top of my head once again. But you gotta think, in this point in the U.S. history, like, when someone killed people, there wasn't really questions about why they killed them. There wasn't questions about how they. There wasn't questions about why they killed them. There wasn't like measures made to prevent that from happening. At that time, we just looked at what you did. You murdered 3 people, put them in the cell, rot in hell, or put them in the electric chair. That was it. Bad boom, bada bang. There was no evaluating how they got there. There was no psychoanalyzing the serial killer so that maybe you can identify these things in this guy to catch another guy. So, and this show pretty much shows the makeup, because it actually is based off of real life events of these ragtag bunch of FBI agents who wanted to pursue the idea of categorizing murderers and stuff and seeing what matches up and trying to create something that could help them prevent murders or make it easier for them to discover who serial killers are based on all this information they've gotten from interviewing other serial killers. So Holden and another FBI agent that he works with, they create this group, and pretty much, you know, they create this group. They go around interviewing serial killers. Now, it didn't start off like that because you know, to be fair, Holden was supposed to be just going around with this veteran FBI agent and just, you know, telling other it's notorious that back in the day that there's even today there's more communication than there's ever been, but law enforcement has many levels and a lot of the levels don't communicate. Like the FBI, especially back then, didn't always communicate with the locals, and the locals didn't always communicate with state police. It's like there was always kind of a gap, you know, like there's certain things that you just don't know because communication was bad back then. That's how obviously 9/11, you know, communication was bad, you know. And it's way better now, obviously, because of stuff like that. But back then, man, communication was terrible, man. Like, local people, you know, like, think about it like this. Like, in the show, they had to send out 2 federal agents, just 2, to talk to the cops, just to talk to local cops, just to let them know what they know, because communication was shit back then. Like, it just was. And, you know, but that's what Holden started off doing, is hanging around going out with this veteran agent going out with this veteran agent named Bill Bench, and going around, you know, helping out cops until Bill and Holden get asked to help out with a case. Help out with an active case. And this event sets off a litany of different things, introduce many characters. Eventually along the way, they get this college, well, she's not a college professor yet, but this psychology, criminology kind of professor named Wendy, who comes aboard and adds another layer to the group, and adds a different perspective, because Holden and Bill are in the in the grime, and you know, they've seen things, but Wendy hasn't. So she's just studying criminology. She's the real psychologist. Like, she's really trying to get in the mind of why people do what they do. They handle her very well. She's a gay character too, but they handle it so well. They handle it one of the best well-handled gay characters I've seen in a show. They don't beat you over the head with it. You don't even know it's happening. But anywho, so that's season 1. Season 1 was great. It ended on this cliffhanger with Holden having a nervous meltdown, and there's insane things going on. I love season 1. I would have gave it a 10. Now season 2 picks up immediately after this. Immediately after Holden's meltdown, immediately after, you know, Holden's mouth has Holden's put his foot in his own mouth. Because as season 1 goes on, Holden slowly starts to become more cynical. Not like cynical in like this. No, he starts to become, I guess he starts to become more cynical. He starts to become more self-absorbed, and he starts to care less what others think. He just cares about what he thinks, because he feels like others aren't willing to push the envelope enough. Because the things he says to the serial killers, and he's got a gift at it. To be fair, he's really good at getting these serial killers to open up to him, to tell him what they've done, because he just talks on their level. He gets in their mind. He finds out what they're about. And one of the things from season 1 that they discovered is every killer or every guilty person has a rock. Rock meaning one of these serial killers that they discovered, had killed someone. Holden had brought a whole bunch of the stuff from the crime scene into the room when they were interviewing him. And once the guy looked at this giant rock with blood all over, which is the murder weapon that he killed the girl with, he started freaking out, melting down. And they discovered that a lot of serial killers, especially the ones who are guilty, most of the guilty serial killers will have a reaction, will all have one weak point. Have a weak point, have something, if you was to bring in the room, it will immediately break them. That if you get this evidence, if you got this, it would break them. They all have a rock. So, like, Holden is, like, flying high. He helped solve 2 murders in season 1. He's pretty damn confident, but he's isolating himself. And season 2 just kind of goes more into that isolation. Season 1, he had a girlfriend who he isolated himself from her. Eventually, she broke up with him. Well, really, he broke up with himself. Watch season 1. And in season 2, he's all alone, really. He has an apartment. I think he got a new apartment. He's by himself there. Bill and him, their relationship is strained. Holden's relationship with everyone is strained. And hell, season 2 starts off with the head of the FBI retiring. But not retiring because he felt like retiring, but retiring because it turns out, even though Holden had said some things, even though Holden had done some things, somebody up in DC was so impressed, which, like I said, I'm sure most of this is like stretched out for drama in the real world. In the real world, the guy probably just retired, and the guy from DC probably did come down to congratulate Holden, because Holden Ford is a real dude. He's a real dude who interviewed serial killers and discussed and learned all these things about them. That's a real life dude. But anywho, this guy from FBI comes down, and he's a cool dude. And like this guy, not FBI, from the from DC comes down, and they talk about how this guy could have been in this high place in DC, and he chose to come down here with them. He chose to be here with you guys. Like, he could have been somewhere else doing something bigger than this, but he chose to come down because he saw the future, and he was like, this is the future right here. He was like, you guys are the future, and I got a good feeling about you guys. I feel like you guys are onto something. And he comes down here, and he's the exact opposite of their last FBI, He's the exact opposite of the last guy who was running things. He's super supportive of Holden. In fact, you think that this is all going to go shit down for Holden. Because everyone keeps saying this word to him. And it's a word that's brought up to Holden multiple times throughout both seasons. Professionalism. Holden gets so, like I said, he gets so enveloped in not only being right, but getting everything right, that he just forgets that there are people. He forgets that he's not the only one working on this, and you can see it, and it's like, and you just can't tell if he's just passionate about finding justice or he wants to be right. Because when he thinks he's not, unless you have him dead to rights, he won't admit he's wrong, and he just becomes the thing is, he's good. He is good. He knows what he's doing. He becomes kind of a prick. Holden becomes kind of a prick, especially in season 2, because especially once the guy from DC comes down and pretty much just says, we're building this, because he wants to expand their division, their small division that started off in a basement. By the way, they were like literally the FBI's pet project. That's now the biggest thing in the FBI. He's like, we will be, and the guy from DC's main goal is to not only expand Holden in Bill's department, Bill and Wendy's department, but expand it to such a degree that they will be the first people, whenever there's a serial killer or something of this nature brought up, they'll be the first people called in to investigate it before anyone else gets to. And it's expanding, and like literally it's this grand thing, and like Holden is the head piece of that, because. And I love that, though. I love this. I don't know the actor who plays the DC. I don't know the actor's name who plays the guy, the new head of the FBI who came down from DC. But I do know he plays a lot of bad guys, and he plays a lot of over-the-top roles. So it was weird seeing him as this more conservative guy. And like I said, he was back. He's definitely shady-ish, but he hasn't done anything too shady yet as of season 2. He didn't do anything too shady. Just the way he acts kind of gives off the vibe he might do something shady one day. If we get a season 2, who knows? 3, who knows? Netflix cancels every fucking thing. But season 2 was fucking great. It was just as good as season 1. It was great. Holden was great. Bill has this interesting story going on. I will say Wendy was probably the one who suffered the most out of season 2, because although she had an interesting story going on, it was kind of a story that I was just like, I'm not quite sure what that was all about. You know, there's a story where obviously Wendy's alone too. She moved down there. You know, she had a falling out with her former lover, you know, out in Boston, who she was her college professor, actually. I thought that was an interesting thing too, that they did that thing that's usually a man, the male college professor and the female student, them, you know, fucking, and like her being in love and him being like, whoa, this is just a thing. They did that, except it was just two women, except it was a female professor and a young girl, and she realizing, you just want me around for, you know, sex and stuff. And I was just like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's pretty nifty. They did it without even beating you over the head with it. It's just like, I see what you did there. I like it. But I will say her story was a little bit more beaten over the head, and like, it could have been, it wasn't as subtle as this show is, because this show is so great at being subtle. It's so great at being subtle. It's so great at being subtle and unnerving. All the actors do a great job. The guy who plays Ed, is just phenomenal. Like, you don't see Ed as much as you did in the first season, but he's still just phenomenal because he's creepy. Because this is a man in real life too, who the co-ed killer. This is a man who murdered, I think 6 women and his mother, and fucked their heads. And yet, when you see him talking, you swear to God, he's the chillest guy that ever walked the earth, right? And he's just so calm, but he's 6'9", and 300 pounds of and he could just crush you with his bare hands. And it's like, Ed is so... I don't know who that actor is who played Ed, but that guy needs some work. He is captivating. I'm telling you, he is captivating. You're just like, there's something about him. You like him, but you're terrified of him because you know what he could do. You know what he did do, and it's just and you don't want to. And that's what the show fucks with you. The show fucks with you because you forget that these are evil, disgusting, despicable people who've done terrible things. And that's the thing that everyone kind of gets on Holden about, is because Holden goes down to their level so often that it's hard to tell sometimes it's hard to tell if Holden is acting or if he's not judging. And like they said all the time on the show, you can't judge these people. You got to be able to do this unbiasedly. And like I said, all of them have their own various reasons for being uneasy about it. Obviously, Bill was definitely uneasy about it. In fact, in season 1, Bill had a nervous breakdown. Bill has the most fascinating story in season 2, though. Bill shines with this season 2. Bill has this great story with his wife, and I know it sounds like this video is going on long, but it's just so much to talk about. I love this show. It's just super cerebral. It's super dark. You have to have, it's a binge, man. It just keeps bringing you back. But Bill has this thing with his son and his wife that ends in just almost heartbreak, but just this what's gonna happen next. It even ends, this season even ends shitty, because at least last year ended with them getting the killer. I'm not gonna say if it ends with them getting the killer or not, but once you start watching it, you realize what happened, and then the thing that they're involved in is a real life thing. That's what goes into, obviously the idea of, there are pros and cons about basing this stuff off of real life events, completely basing this stuff off of real life events. And it's just this is interesting too. They play with kind of a racism, but not in a beating over your head way, because you gotta remember, this is the 70s, so racism, racism is alive today. Racism is still around, in a pretty big way in the 70s and the early 70s. So, and there's this killer, and there's this whole almost philosophical, almost interesting debate, because in a weird way, the show kind of says something about they're trying to say that the racial profiling was created for this time, and then the show kind of says that racial profiling, this is what maybe Holden and them wanted it to be, but the show sort of kind of says that racial profiling isn't about black or Latinos. It's supposed to just be for this thing. Essentially, if a bank got robbed, it's more likely to be a white dude. But if someone got shot in projects, it's more likely to be a black dude. That's what they really meant, and it's kind of got blown out of proportion, because Holden created this racial profile for who they think the killer is, and he kept saying it's a black man in his late 20s. Now, when you see how he came to that conclusion, it's not race based. It's not, oh, fuck black people. It's no, he did little fillers. He did things. He studied. He went out. He was looking around. He realized, like, there's no way in hell that some white dude's just wandering around the projects getting kids to come in his car. None of these kids would come near a white guy's car. And when he goes through the reasons why he thinks it has to be a black kid in his early 20s, it all makes sense. But that's not what the black community hear in the show. They just hear your racial profiling. It's probably some KKK member or something, which it could be. And the show even introduced the concept of multiple killers taking advantage of the stir that one killer's getting, knowing that they can get away with it because knowing that they might get away with it because the cops are looking for one killer, so they'll catch him and then they'll just wrap it all up. So they put out there the idea that there could be multiple people who've committed murders. Not only does this show put out the idea that there could be multiple people committing murders and one person get brought down for all of them when there's actually more people out there who are doing it. This show brings up the idea, and Ed says it best. He's like, the real people out there you don't know are doing this, and you will never know they're doing this if they don't want you to know they're doing this. If they don't want you to know they're doing this, because all they do every waking moment of every waking day is plan this shit and think about this shit, and the only how you're gonna catch these people is if they mess up or just an act of God, like fucking what's his face, damn it, how am I forgetting his name? Like, goddamn, like I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but like getting pulled over at traffic or just a lock of hair blows down the leg. It's basically like that's the only how you're gonna catch someone like me, a person who just thinks about this all the time, who analyzes all the time, especially in the 70s. In the 70s, man, good luck finding, because like nowadays our DNA stuff is so ridiculously advanced. Like the only how a serial killer can get away with this shit is if he's lucky or he really knows what he's doing. But back then, early 70s, limited resources, unless he say she say is a lot of things, but like they beat you over the head with the idea that it doesn't matter what you know, it only matters what you can prove. And that's just the system, man. That's just how the system works. There are no perfect systems, in my opinion. It's just how the system works. It doesn't matter what you know, it matters what you can prove. Now, granted, technology is getting to a certain degree that you really can't get away with anything, so it's not a big deal now. But back then, like I said, man, that had to be a bitch when you just look at, because there's one point where they know they got their guy, and it's just like, if you can't prove it, like you have to find something. Literally, if someone killed someone, they could burn all the shit, and you can't arrest them for it. It doesn't even matter. Like, someone could be like, I think I saw him over there, but you can't arrest them for it. So, but anywho, kind of got on a little tangent there, but I love this show. MindHunter Season 2, I give it a 10. I give both seasons of the MindHunter 10s. It's the only time I've ever given 2 seasons 10s. But this show is phenomenal. I hope it gets a Season 3. It took 3 years. It took 2 years for it to get a Season 2, so that's just mind-blowing to me. So, I mean, I hope it gets a Season 2. I love Holden. I love this cast. I hope Wendy gets more to do. There's so much to be wrapped up, so I hope this isn't the end. Also, throughout Season 1 and throughout Season 2, they've been teasing the, what's the DTK? Torture, bind, strangle, BTK? BTK. They've been teasing the BTK killer, which, if you've been following any of that kind of stuff, you know who that is. They've been teasing him, they've been setting him up, and they've been beating over the head that he's who the show's been sort of building around, is the BTK killer. You see minor thing before I call it a wrap. You see Charles Manson, and Charles Manson was built up in the first season too. It's like, we want to talk to Charles Manson. They'll never let us get to Charles Manson. And the funny thing is, the same actor who plays Charles Manson in Once Upon a Time in Mexico plays Charles Manson in this too. Now, granted, he's got a bigger beard and everything, so you won't really be able to tell, but it is him. It says it, and I remember them talking about it. The same actor. That's pretty hilarious. Now, he didn't have any really dialogue in Once Upon a Time in Mexico, so it's pretty easy, but yeah, man, when they meet Charles Manson, he's just this fucked up. He's literally a death hippie. Of course, they play up the idea, and this is new too, and it's controversial maybe, but they play up the idea that Manson himself was a pussy and actually wouldn't have killed anyone. but he allowed them to kill people so that he can have control. Like, there's this whole it's just so much into it. There's so much into it. There's so much into it. There's maybe he did it. Maybe they did it on their own. Like maybe there's an idea that maybe he didn't brainwash them. Maybe he just pushed the button on something that was gonna. Maybe he just sped up something they were gonna do eventually. Anyways, like, there's so much to think about. The show's just thought provoking. It's thought provoking. It's suspenseful. Even if you know what's gonna happen, it just adds more context to the story. Yeah, MindHunter Season 2 is perfect. Well, not perfect, but it's, like, to me, those slows are so much better than most shows' lows that I'm just going to let this slide. I'm giving MindHunter Season 2. You know what? Okay, I'll give it a 9.5. Because, like I said, I didn't think Wendy had the strongest thing in the show, and there were some real blunt things that the show's usually really subtle about. But MindHunter Season 2, have you seen it? Did you see MindHunter Season 1? Please comment below. Let me know what you thought about the show, and I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye. Please remember to like and subscribe.